All right, so let's talk about why reps in reserve and RPE, or
rate of perceived exertion,
is horrible advice for you if you're just getting into the resistance training or the fitness game. So here's the deal. So what is RIR, or reps in reserve?
Reps in reserve refers to the proximity to failure you terminate your set at, or really when you finish your set, how many more reps could you have done in theory if you had continued?
So if I painted the picture
total failure,
right. Total failure. That means unable to complete another repetition,
correct,
which has some relativity to it, like based on the user. Mm-hmm. So
the exercise.
We'll talk about that. So if I was supposed to do 10 reps with one RIR, then that would be, I needed to get to 10, but I should be able to get to 11.
In theory, you would have been able to do one more.
Yes.
Rep.
Okay. So that could be very confusing for somebody that's just kind of getting started in this game, but we'll come back.
Sure. Because they don't know, right?
And then RPE is a rate of perceived exertion. Mm-hmm. And so if we very simply used a scale of 1 to 10, and I actually like using a scale of 1 to 5.
Okay. Sure. Yeah. It's
because 10 leaves way too much in the middle.
Again, like a 6 or 7.
Yeah, I don't even know what that
so
means.
much.
So if I said RPE scale of 1 to 5, 1 feels like you're doing nothing. You're sitting on the couch being a lazy ass, right? In this particular workout.
Sure.
Right? Or sitting on the sidelines watching it happen.
Yep.
And 5 meaning you feel like you're about to die.
Yeah.
Like there's no way you could pick up that weight again. There's no way you could go another 3 seconds on that treadmill or on that ski erg or rower or whatever else. That's 5. It's absolute all out max effort done failure. Where would you fall on that RPE scale? So again, I like 1 to 5 because if you tell me 2, then I know you're starting to feel this a little bit, but that's about it, right? If you tell me 3, all right, you're working it basically in my mind at about your 80%, right? Yep. If you told me 4, you're working at your 90-95% threshold here. Like this isn't going to last much longer.
Sure.
And 5 means you're fucking dead.
Yep.
Like you're dead. You probably couldn't even tell me, say the word 5. You'd have to hold up 5 fingers because you're working that hard.
Exactly.
So maybe that gives some perspective to what RPE is.
Okay.
And so I think RPE is a little bit easier for a lot of people to kind of picture, but it's also very relative, right? It's also very relative. Yeah. But it's almost comparable when you look at like RIR and RPE are they can kind of feel similar if you're talking like a range
for sure
in terms of like intensity.
Well, here's why, because we use them, or the way they're both used is to know when to stop a set short of failure. People use RPE in the strength community. So powerlifters and Olympic lifters, especially because you don't want to be maxing out all the time, but you want to be getting within a percentage of that max. RIR and RPE RIR is similar because you're usually using it to stop a couple reps shy of failure. And so it's a way to quantify that so that your intensity of effort is standardized.
Yeah. So from a programming perspective, if you're working off of a program that somebody's giving you or you pulled, off the internet, you're paying for or whatever else, and RPE is in there, or RIR is in there, there's some very, very specific information that you need to have to make that program worth whatever you paid for it or even doing, right? Because if I don't know what failure looks like, how the hell am I going to know what my level 5 is on an RPE or my level or what my failure point is at a particular exercise or a particular movement or whatever it is that's in my training program? It could be an all out sprint again on the bike, or it could be, a max squat, right? And then there's factors that we can maybe talk about for a little bit after that. So the point of this is if you're brand new to this, or if you've never been on any kind of a structured resistance training program or performance training program that has taken you through this periodization that we've talked about to be able to build up to actually get to a point where it makes sense to push your max effort, right? So you've built a high level of proprioception. You've built a high level of neuromuscular coordination and adaptation.
Absolutely.
You've built the endurance, if I didn't say that already. You've built a level of confidence, right? To kind of understand what that feels like internally, intrinsically. Like, am I really working hard?
Yeah.
Am I not working hard? Have you pushed yourself over the edge?
Being honest with yourself.
Yeah. Have you gotten to a point where you're like, that was too much. I just threw up. That's too much.
Okay. Yeah,
right? Like you crossed over it. But I think it's important. It's a learning experience. It's also a character builder.
For sure.
Right. When you've taken yourself to that point. Yeah. If you've not done those things, working off from an RPE scale or an RIR scale really won't make any sense for you. So how do you reasonably put together a program to then understand what RIR and RPE should and could mean to you?
Sure. Well, personally, I like to use RIR a lot more if I use either of the two, just because, at least in a bodybuilding context, I think it's easier to quantify based on number of reps, because we can standardize things like the cadence of the rep. What's the tempo? If every rep looks the same tempo wise, then you know what another rep is going to require out of you, correct? If I get somebody who's fairly new to lifting, I'll usually put them on a program where I'll say 0 to 1 RIR is where they should terminate the set, meaning they should train until they either physically fail when they're attempting to complete the last rep, or they are very, very sure that they wouldn't be able to complete another one. Or if they could, maybe one. I do leave some wiggle room because usually for novice and even intermediate lifters, what they perceive is 1 rep shy of failure is actually like 4 or 5 reps shy of failure.
Yes.
And there's also some truth to what they think because it depends on the exercise,
Yeah.
If you're using a free weight movement, especially one that's not like stabilized in any way, like a dumbbell chest press or, squatting, things like that, squatting with a bar on your back, you may actually be about to fail, but you're not about to fail because the target muscles are unable to produce any more force. You're about to fail because form breaks down. Yeah. And so then we have to look at like, what is failure? Are we talking about mechanical failure or concentric failure?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Which, to put simply, mechanical failure is you can't complete the rep properly anymore, which is usually what we're talking about. Concentric failure is your muscles physically cannot produce force anymore, which is usually not what we're talking about unless you're really advanced.
That's the important factor, right?
Really
so
advanced.
Like if you stabilized your arm and went through like preacher bicep curl and you can't contract anymore instead of going to barbell squat,
right?
Where I go in and I'm now, butt winking or, flaring in from the ribs. I can't, but my quads, glutes and hams can still work. Yeah. It's just, the whole coordination of the body, right?
Yeah.
And strength level of the body, right? Because if that's the case, then we have work to do.
Oh, absolutely.
It's on those weak links.
On those weaker links, exactly.
Full body. A lot of these things are full body exercises too, right? And I remember when I started bodybuilding, everything was broken down into muscle groups. And then like when you're squatting, right, I would be like, oh, dude, like my back is weak. And like I really couldn't hold the bar up so long, right? So I'd squat and then I'd go to the leg press to finish off, right? And then I didn't really want to focus on my squat. But when I did, right, and focus on these full body exercises, I didn't have to do as much accessories, right, and focus on the legs because I was now able to produce the desired result within that exercise without failing from my spine, right?
Something unrelated to what you were trying to target. Related, but not from a muscular or building or a power or whatever sense. Yeah. So I like what you said there about the RIR and what you like to program, particularly for your bodybuilders, because it's very measurable, right? And just like RPE would be too, but RPE is really
subjective.
It's totally subjective.
Yeah.
And you can't, basically you're going off of a feeling.
I don't like it.
Right. And so what are the things that would impact, right?
Your rate of perceived exertion.
Your rate of perceived exertion. So like we've talked about these things before, and a lot of things can impact that. So just
sleep. How much did you sleep last night?
Or not.
Are you lacking on sleep, or was your sleep quality poor? You're probably going to have a harder time with loads that you would generally be able to lift with more ease.
Absolutely.
If you didn't eat enough, or even if you're working out at a different time of day. If you usually work out in the evenings with 4 meals in you, and then you go and work out in the morning with only 1 meal in you, or God forbid you work out fasted in the morning, right? You're not going to feel as strong. And
it was interesting because I have one of our well, somebody that's close to me is training for competition right now and trying to cram a lot of things into life and training as athletes will have to do.
Yeah.
Right. And it was interesting because what's being used within the program right now is an RPE scale.
Sure.
And we're supposed to be tracking this stuff. Well, life is getting crazy. There's like a move happening in this person's life. Like there's a lot of things, work, there's the training, there's trying to be social and have a life and all these things. So there was a training session that happened on like Thursday night, like the night before. Right. And it's like, man, I have all these things I need to do tomorrow and I want to do tomorrow. And so in order for me to do that, now I have to go back in Friday morning in less than 24-hour turnaround. And I have to put in this work. My RPE scale, right, or that person's RPE scale on Friday, right, after training like that, when they're usually training late afternoon, evenings, is going to be way different.
Yep.
And if you know that, then maybe you're
okay with it.
You're okay.
And you should be, right?
Because you know how to work around that.
Exactly. But if you're not and you don't know, or you're at the beginning of at stages of a new training program, which is where this person is on a mesocycle to get them to competition in a short period of time, that's a poor play.
Yeah.
That is a very poor play because every training session counts all the time. But in this case, they really count maybe at a higher level because you're trying to find out what the baseline is in this program so that you can program appropriately on the way to the comp. So I was just kind of shaking my head going, this is not good. Right. Yeah. I saw that person later on Friday. I said, how was the workout? And they said,
rough.
It was a little rough. Yeah. I felt rushed, right? There was that part of it, but that plays into RPE as well. And it was a little rough. So anyway, point being, there has to be some consistency in your program over a longer period of time and on a daily, weekly basis in order to understand what that RPE is and understand on a daily, weekly basis, your RPE is going to be impacted by, as you said, sleep or
everything. Yeah. The rest of your life.
A host of everything. Many things. Yeah.
And at the end of the day, regardless of how you feel, you need to fucking train. You're in the gym to train.
So how do you get around this? So as a new person, what should I be focused on if I'm really trying to push? I want to include some intensity, right? And again, that's what we're managing with the RPE scale, right? Or RIR. What are some things that I can do to help me understand better what my RPE is and ultimately, because it's going to change, right? Should I be focused on that right now, or what are the things that I can do along the way in my new program to start to understand that better?
Sure.
Well, is this a completely new lifter?
That's the question.
Well, yeah.
So this person is completely new.
Well, so again, I opened up with the statements. Why, if you're new to this, RIR and RPE is worthless to you, or you shouldn't be thinking about it. It's not good advice.
You can't get the most out of using it, and it'll probably rob you of.
I felt like shit when I'm coming back and I feel weak. I don't feel good the first weeks. Like I am tired. I'm bogged down. I don't stop and I focus on eating and food. And once you get into the routine, it's there. And it's solid. Yeah. Get away from feelings. Right. Get in, train, eat. Focus on big blocks. Get your water. Get your sleep. Right. And with all of that, you're going to learn and start to understand, okay, this exercise is fucking hard for me. This one isn't. I'm going to focus on, like, if you're snatching overhead, right? And you're like, over time, like, hey, I feel better with 3 meals in me. In the morning, I really suck and I'm weak. Or over time, it's like, I have to work out in the morning because of work. You get used to it. You get used to working out fasted. I work out fasted. I love it. Phenomenal.
Yep. I can't do it.
Yeah.
See, it's like,
I need 3-4 meals in me.
Yeah. And so, just thinking like that, just coming in and finding what works for you. And you might have to juggle and try things and fuck up. Hey, this didn't work for me, or I felt like shit today.
You have to fuck up.
Yeah, but you still train, right? Yeah. You still fucking train.
But I think the point you're making is you're finding some consistency, and again, what kind of works best for you.
Exactly.
And you're keeping track of this. There can't be randomness.
Yes. That's what I was
and an RPE
say.
scale.
Yeah.
So you can't have randomness. Yeah. I mean, in like your training program, your nutrition, your sleep habits.
It should be consistent.
Yes. You can't have randomness and have RPE or RIR. You can't have RIR, but understand it's probably not going to be a true number.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? So without the consistency,
You need numerical
You
data.
can't have your RPE.
Frankly, if you're a new person, you should not have randomness anyway, because these are all new movements to you. You need to put in some time to build the motor patterns that are these movements, right? If you've ever played a sport before, like let's say you play baseball, you practice swinging and you practice throwing. And if you're a pitcher, you practice throwing as a pitcher. You practice throwing different types of balls. And over time, you solidify those motor pathways. And so you're able to do them without having to think about it. If you play music, you practice scales and you do it slowly so you don't make mistakes until you can play those scales without thinking about it. You solidify that motor pathway. We want you to develop that. You want to develop that with every exercise you do, whether you're training to build big muscles or training to be really fucking strong. So when you go to the gym, if you are using a different chest pressing machine every fucking week, you're not building any neural pathway because you're doing a different movement every time.
There can be benefit to that.
Totally.
Yeah.
But as a general rule, you want to pick a few movements for each muscle group and get really good at them over time.
Right. It's called training.
Yes.
When I say getting good at, I mean two things. I mean, getting really comfortable with the mechanics so that you feel it the way you want to feel it every time, and every rep looks and feels exactly the same as the one before it, and getting good at pushing hard on it so that you learn how to train to what true failure is.
Yeah, it's training. It's practice.
It's practice.
You're practicing it, and through that practice comes skill acquisition, right? And those skills, and it's both hard skills and the soft skills of knowing. Going back to what where Jeff was there with your feelings, like what do these feelings really mean? What am I really feeling here, right? Yeah. Versus just having, kind of this energy that you're trying to kind of keep track of. I think. How do you do it as a new person? Well, first off, like I know it's really easy. Like when you're trying, it's not easy. Sorry. When you're trying to find the right fit for you, you're trying to jump into a new program. You're trying to find the right gym, whatever it is. Like you often do go on feelings.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, even if you have a little bit of exercise history, like you're walking back into the gym for the first time, or you've been in it for a while and you're looking for a change, you're kind of looking for what feels good. And look, man, that's important. Like you want to feel good when you're there in your environment, right? But at the same time, like that feeling, those feelings can kind of get in the way of getting yourself onto what kind of honestly could be feel like a little bit mundane. Like you need to be on an organized program, right? It should be fun for you, but you need to be able to look at it and see, where am I going to be in a month? Where am I going to be, generally speaking, in 2 months? Because I might not have all those answers, but I have this map kind of lined out in front of me so I can keep track of what I'm doing. I can get back on track when I get off track, because that shit's going to happen, right? And take a hard look at what I am achieving and what I'm not achieving. And then you're giving yourself or your coach or, whoever your training partner, a platform to start having these conversations about what your RPE maybe is or should be.
For sure.
And your RIRs and then how to adjust the program accordingly. So when you're looking at your fitness program, again, if you're one of those people that just like to kind of go with what's, you have a membership in 3 different places, and I do yoga on Fridays, and then I go to, Orange Theory over here, and I do that circuit workout over there. And then I go to the gym 2 times a week. And then occasionally I'll get into that cycling class up the way. There's nothing wrong with that. But within that, if you're talking about RPE, like, well, that's going to be all over the map. Yeah. So when it's particularly within your exercise training program or resistance training program, sorry. So again, is it shitty advice? I don't think it's shitty advice. I think it's probably shitty timing of where you'd be entering or where you'd be starting to play around with the RPE if you're in the beginning stages or you're jumping back into it.
Because RIR and RPE are meant to manage fatigue. And frankly, if you're a beginner, you don't need that yet, because the floor is so low.
Yeah.
You could do like 1 hard set per exercise each workout for multiple weeks, and you'll grow fantastically.
Yep.
If you've been training for, 8+ years, the ceiling is much higher. And so then you do need to manage fatigue, because not only is the ceiling for gains higher, or for how much you need to do minimum to achieve gains, but the ceiling for the maximum that you're able to do is also very close to that. And so you don't want to jump all the way up to here,
right?
So you want to spend time in this very low range that you have to work with. But again, beginners,
they have no idea. Yeah.
So,
because they don't know the movement. And so that's also when they're first starting too, you're looking at nutrition, they don't need as much carbs post-workout, right?
Right,
They're
so-
not eliciting the same amount of damage.
Yeah.
Right. As let's say you and me squatted, someone else squatted. It looks the same. It's the same number. I'm more efficient. I cause more damage. This person has to do 5 or 6 sets to get the same amount of stimulus because they're not activating properly, right?
So that's it's another way to look at kind of entering into it, and we're starting to talk about very nuanced things.
Yeah.
And these are important training variables that go into any training program. So I guess the advice would be, it's not that RPE isn't important.
No.
It's not that it's terrible advice, just might be not so great advice for you right now.
For that population.
Yeah, for that particular population right now. And the things that you can do to get to a point where that really makes more sense is get yourself on an organized program. And think, when I say that, like a little bit longer term program, at least 3 months.
Yeah.
At least 3 months of programming to where you can track and get a better understanding. And you're going to have to do another 3 months and then another 3 months after that.
Stops.
And and you might be getting, like, if you're just kind of re-entering into this, the first month, there's not going to be any RPE programming in there. Like if you're getting a program from Red Dot Fitness, whether it be online or in person here, you're not getting RPE from us if you're just jumping back in the first month, maybe even 6 weeks, unless you're coming to us with an exercise history and you've got a high level of knowledge of kind of where your ceilings are.
Absolutely.
But it's going to take some time for us to get there, and then we're going to program that stuff in and we're going to play around with it.
Right.
It's not going to happen right away.